Hello everyone, today we continue with the next episode in the tearful and resilient love story between CEO James and the young woman. Dive a journey where every moment grips our hearts with emotion. In the previous episode, after days of pursuit and intense mind games, the cunning John, the mastermind behind every dark scheme and all the pain James and Dive had endured, was finally captured. Justice, in part, had been served, yet the victory was far from complete. In a life or death moment, Dive without a second thought threw herself in front of James to block a fatal blow. In that instant, the fragile girl became a living shield, sacrificing everything for the man she loved. The price was devastating. She fell into a deep coma, showing no sign of waking. The cold, white hospital room has now become James' only world. Every day, he sits there, holding her hand, whispering words no one hears, clinging to the faint hope of a miracle. He once a strong, decisive CEO is now just a man praying every second for the woman he loves to come back to him. Will Dive ever wake up? Can the wounds on her body heal? And more importantly, can the wounds in her heart, after so much pain and loss, ever be mended? Is their love strong enough to defy fate, to lead them back to each other, hand in hand, walking down the aisle as they once dreamed? Today's episode will bring us heart-wrenching developments, moments of suspense, and perhaps a glimmer of hope. We invite you to watch closely and not miss a single moment of James and Dive's journey, for true love sometimes doesn't need miracles, it is a miracle in itself. After all the tireless efforts of the medical team and the unwavering love of James, who never left her side, the miracle finally happened. Dive woke up, a faint flutter of her eyelashes, a weak breath escaping her lips, but it was enough to reignite a sky full of hope that once seemed extinguished. James, the man who had stayed up countless nights, who had prayed endlessly at her bedside, could hardly believe his eyes. A silent tear rolled down his cheek, no longer from sorrow but from joy, pure, simple, overwhelming joy. She had returned from the fragile edge between life and death. A miracle, but a miracle born of love. In the days that followed, as Dive gradually regained her strength, James brought her back to their small home, a place that once held the remnant of unfinished dreams. He was by her side every moment, never leaving, not even for a second. No longer the cold CEO of million-dollar boardrooms, James was now just a man, stripped of titles, doing everything he could to keep the woman he loved safe and at peace. One morning, as soft sunlight crept gently through the window, Dive woke up. She turned her head slightly and saw James asleep in the chair beside her, still loosely holding her hand from the night before. He hadn't slept on the bed, afraid he might disturb her rest. He chose the hard wooden chair just to be near her, just to protect her, just to care for her. Dive smiled softly, tears brimming in her eyes. She didn't need to hear the words "I love you," because every action James had taken had already said it all. In a world full of storms, to have someone who stays, who refuses to leave when you're at your weakest, may just be the greatest blessing of all. As Dive's health gradually recovered, it was as if life had gifted them a second chance, a chance to fully embrace the peaceful days they had once longed for. No more hospital rooms, no more anxious nights beside beeping monitors. Now they welcomed each sunrise with the simplest joys, cooking together, walking through the garden, brewing a cup of hot tea, and sharing stories of the past as if waking from a long dream. James now cherished every single second by the side of the woman he loved. But deep down, he also knew, after everything, there was still a long road ahead, one where duty, responsibilities, and the future awaited him. One gentle morning, bathed in sunlight, James walked up to Dive, softly brushed back her hair, and placed a tender kiss on her forehead, a kiss full of affection and gratitude. "I'm heading to work now. Take care of yourself, okay? I'll try to come home for lunch." Dive nodded with a smile, her eyes following him until his figure disappeared behind the gate. Though worry still lingered in her heart, She knew it was time for James to return to his mission. Back at work, after all the chaos, James threw himself into reassessing every aspect of the company's operations. Because of the relentless disruptions caused by John, he had been forced to put everything on hold, but now, with that shadow gone, he was determined to rebuild. He personally visited the forested areas managed by the company, walking for hours beneath the lush green canopy to directly evaluate timber quality. Alongside forestry engineers, he inspected each section, taking notes on tree ages, estimated yields, and potential risks for the upcoming harvest season. Beyond that, he also reconnected with business partners negotiating prices, product specifications, and marketing strategies. Many contracts that once seemed indefinitely suspended were now back in motion, with John behind bars. The invisible walls that once hindered progress began to crumble, trust was restored, and the market began to open up again. Once more, James proved his strength, not just as a man capable of love and sacrifice, but as a visionary entrepreneur, one who could rise from the ruins and rebuild a future grounded in the strongest of roots. While James was busy rebuilding the company, back in the countryside, Dipe the gentle, resilient girl had gradually rediscovered a peaceful rhythm of life in the lush garden she nurtured with her own hands. Despite everything she had been through, Dipe's eyes now shone with a radiant calmness, as gentle and bright as a summer morning. No longer the fragile girl lying silently in a hospital bed, she was now healthy, vibrant, and full of life. That morning, after seeing James off to work with a warm smile and a loving squeeze of his hand, Dipe stepped back inside, changed into her light blue albieba, tied her hair neatly behind her back, picked up her basket, and headed out to the garden. This year's lychee harvest was bountiful. The lychee trees in her yard were heavy with fruit, each one plump and ruby red, exuding the sweet, distinctive fragrance of summer. The sunlight filtered gently through the leaves, casting a warm glow on Dipe's rosy skin, making her blend perfectly into the serene countryside like a scene straight out of a pastoral painting. Though the trees were tall and aged with thick, towering trunks, they were no match for Dipe's quiet determination. With practiced ease, she propped a sturdy bamboo ladder against one of the trees and climbed up step by steady step. Her hands, though small, were nimble and careful. She picked each ripe cluster with precision, cutting close to the stem to keep the fruit fresh longer as she worked. She occasionally paused to wipe the sweat from her brow and smiled to herself, the smile of someone deeply grateful for a second chance at life. Once the basket was full, Dipe climbed down, carefully selecting the finest bunches and tying them together with dried banana fiber type of string she made herself, strong, sustainable, and eco-friendly. Each bundle was neatly arranged in woven baskets lined with banana leaves, keeping the lychees cool and clean. Later, she carried the baskets to the local morning market. Along the way, she was greeted by familiar faces. "Oh, Dipe, you're looking well. Selling lychees at the market today?" "The lychees I bought from you last year, my husband devoured them before I could even put some away. They were amazing." She barely had time to set up her small stall before people began flocking over. There was no need to shout or advertise. Customers came on their own, drawn by the reputation she had built. Fruit that was clean, fresh, and naturally delicious, grown with care, watered by hand, and untouched by harmful chemicals. An hour passed, and her baskets were empty, save for a few scattered leaves at the bottom. Dipe beamed, bowing her head to thank each person. In her hands now was a worn cloth bag, holding a handful of small bills, not much in value, but filled with pride and quiet joy. After her successful morning selling lychees with her baskets empty, and a smile still lingering on her lips, Dipe gently reached for a small bag she had prepared earlier. Inside were the finest lychees, ruby red, plump, and dripping with sweetness, hand-picked with care. Not for sale, but for someone special. She had saved them for one person, James' mother. Dipe felt immense gratitude toward her, the woman who had taken care of the house, cooked porridge, watched over her through countless sleepless nights while she lay unconscious. To Dipe, she wasn't just James' mother, she had become a maternal figure, quietly filling a space in Dipe's heart that had remained hollow ever since her own mother passed away. When Dipe arrived, James' mother was watering plants by the porch. Seeing the young woman step through the gate with a basket of fruit in her arms, she greeted her with a warm smile. "Dipe, my dear, oh, look at you healthy again, I'm so glad." The gentle words made Dipe's eyes sting with tears. She hurried over, bowed respectfully, and handed her the basket. "I picked some of the best likies this morning and thought of you. I wanted to give them to you as a thank you for everything you've done for me." There was no need to say more. The older woman set the basket down and took Dipe's hands in hers. Her eyes filled with genuine affection, not the polite warmth of someone dealing with her son's girlfriend, but the deep care of a woman who had lived through loss and now found someone she wanted to protect. They sat together on the porch, talking like a true mother and daughter. What began as light conversation slowly turned emotional. Dipe shared her memories of the day she was held captive, the fear, the pain, and the scars not only on her body but etched deep in her soul. She then softly mentioned Tung, the man who had appeared just in time to save her from the hands of evil, but with a calm, steady voice, she made herself clear. "Tung and I were just friends. He's a good man, but not the one I choose to walk this life with." James' mother nodded, without judgment. Her eyes held nothing but understanding. "I know. My daughter has always been clear-eyed when it comes to people." Just those few words, "my daughter," and tears welled up in Dipe's eyes. It had been so many years since she last heard someone call her that. After a moment of quiet, the older woman gently held her hand and said, "Why don't you come stay here with me for a while? I'm getting older and it would be nice to have someone to keep me company. You'd be safer here. I'd have peace of mind too." Dipe lowered her head, deeply moved, but softly declined. "I know you care for me, and I'm so grateful, but I'm afraid I'd be a burden. I want to face everything on my own, to be stronger, to be worthy of James." James' mother smiled gently, not offended in the least. She softly stroked Dipe's hand and said, "You would never be a burden. But if that's your decision, I'll respect it. Just know this house will always have a place for you, anytime you need." That afternoon, James returned earlier than usual. As his car pulled up in front of his mother's house, he noticed a familiar pair of small sandals resting neatly on the doorstep. A warm feeling stirred in his chest. He quickened his pace. "Hi, Mom." Dipe? Dipe was sitting on the porch, deftly folding the laundry James' mother had just washed, a gentle smile still lingering on her lips after their heartfelt conversation. She looked up, slightly startled, but quickly smiled again. "I came to visit your mom, and I picked some likies earlier. Thought I'd bring her a few." James took in the scene, and suddenly, everything felt peaceful. His mother stepped outside as well, beaming, her gaze moving between the two of them, filled with quiet hope. After a few warm exchanges with his mother, James gently led Dipe to the small garden behind the house. The afternoon breeze stirred the leaves, casting flickers of sunlight onto her hair, making her face glow, though he noticed a subtle tiredness in her expression. James hesitated, then softly said, "I know you're strong, Dipe, but you don't have to carry everything alone anymore. You've been through so much. Please don't keep enduring in silence. If staying at my mom's house feels uncomfortable, then come live closer to me. I can find you a safe, quiet place somewhere I can take better care of you." Dipe lowered her gaze, her heart tangled in emotion. She knew James was only thinking of her, but there was still something inside her, a quiet, unshakable belief that she needed to stand on her own, that she didn't want to become a burden, not even to the man she loved. "Thank you, James. I'm truly grateful that you always think of me. But I want to try being independent for a while. I've asked a neighbor to help me find a small house nearby. I just want to prove to myself that I'm no longer weak, that I can rise again on my own 2 feet." James looked at her with eyes full of love and concern. After a long pause, he slowly nodded. "All right, if that's what you need, I respect your decision. But I won't let you go searching alone. Tomorrow, we'll look together. No matter where you are, I'll be right there beside you." Dipe smiled. She didn't say anything more. But in her heart, his words rang out like an unspoken vow, stronger and more enduring than any grand promise. The next morning, just as he had promised, James took Dipe back to their old farm, the place filled with memories of the days they spent rebuilding their home after everything fell apart. The car rolled quietly along the familiar road. The two of them sat side by side in peaceful silence. No words were needed, just a glance between them during those quiet moments was enough to feel their hearts beating in unison. But as the car turned onto the path leading through the village rice fields, the scene before them made them stop in their tracks. The once lush, green fields were now submerged in water, mud stretched far and wide. The rice plants lay flattened, many areas stripped down to bare stubs. Villagers stood scattered along the roadside, eyes filled with despair. A flash flood from upstream had swept through during the night, too fast, too fierce, and with it carried away the hopes of the season's harvest. James stopped the car. He stepped out, quietly observing the devastation, then murmured to himself, "We have to do something. We can't just stand by." Not long after, James met with a local government official right there in the field. He listened as villagers described the situation, carefully noting the extent of the damages. No grand promises, no flashy speeches. He simply said, "My company will do what we can to help. Whether it's crops or seedlings, I'll try to gather support to help everyone get back on their feet." Hope returned to the eyes of those around him. In a moment when the flood had swept away everything, a sincere commitment from someone like James felt like a precious lifeline. Back at the farm, James didn't even have time to rest before having to head off again to handle the urgent work ahead. Before he left, he took Dipe's hand in his and said gently, "Stay here, okay? Wait for me. Hockey's with you, so don't be afraid." Dipe nodded, sending him off with a tender smile. After James left, she remained in the small wooden house nestled among the orchard, a quiet, familiar place, peaceful enough for her to reflect on everything she had been through. Hockey, their loyal dog, lay on the porch as always. Every time Dipe stepped outside, he would trot alongside her, tail wagging with joy. She stroked his soft fur and smiled. "Just you and me now, huh? Keep the house safe for me, all right?" She rolled up her sleeves and got to work sweeping, scrubbing the house, tending the garden, watering the vegetable bed she and James once planted together. Every small task stirred memories. But this time, the memories no longer brought fear. They brought strength. Standing before the mirror, she looked at herself. Gone was the frail, hesitant girl who had once been confined to a hospital bed. Now stood a new Dipe, strong, self-reliant, and capable of loving herself. She whispered to her reflection, "Even if life is still full of danger, I'll keep living well. Not for anyone else, but for me. And if love comes again, I won't push it away as long as it's true." These two people, quiet, unassuming, are gently writing one of the most beautiful love stories of all. A love rooted in simplicity, a love expressed through responsibility, a love built on patience and trust. And just like them, we, the ones who follow their journey, can only hope for one thing: that life will remain as peaceful as it is now. So that one day, not too far from today, there will be a sunlit wedding, where James takes Dipe's hand and walks her down the aisle, surrounded by heartfelt blessings, and a perfect ending to all they've endured together. Stay with us for the next chapter in this journey of love, because some love stories, the ones that weather every storm, are the ones most worthy of blooming.
Hello mọi người, lại là mình đây. Cảm ơn mọi người rất là nhiều vì mọi người đã dành thời gian theo dõi hết video hôm nay. Và mọi người ơi, trong video hôm nay thì mọi thứ đang trở nên ổn hơn. James và Diệp thì tình cảm của họ cũng qua nhiều khó khăn thì trở nên sâu sắc hơn, và khó khăn cũng đã vượt qua dần rồi. Tuy nhiên là có một cái vấn đề là James đang muốn Diệp chuyển về nhà anh, hoặc là có thể là ở gần nhà anh hơn để tiện chăm sóc cho cô. Nhưng mà Diệp thì rất là ngại cái làm phiền James á, nên là cô chưa có chuyển về. Còn đối với mẹ James thì tình cảm của mẹ James đối với Diệp, người con dâu tương lai, càng ngày càng yêu thương, yêu quý giống như con gái của mình vậy. Bởi vì mẹ James thì chỉ có mỗi James thôi và không có một cô con gái nào hết. Nên khi biết được hoàn cảnh của Diệp là không có mẹ từ nhỏ, nên bà càng yêu thương và quý cô hơn, coi cô giống như là con ruột của mình vậy. Và liệu hạnh phúc có tới với hai người hay không, và liệu có đám cưới nào sẽ diễn ra hay không, thì hãy chờ đón vào tập sau nha.